Hey everyone, this is Jim Gray from Gray Artist Services. I'm the founder and CEO, and we do four things really well. We do artist management, artist development, marketing, creative, and advertising, and a record label called Redwood Highway Records. Today I'm here with my good friend and collaborator, Antjuan Robinson. How are we doing today?
What's going on, Jimothy?
Talk to me, Jimothy.
Is it too early?
No, it's not too early for Jimothy. I've been called, there's so many different versions of my name.
Yeah.
I have nicknames like Graybeard and Jim and Jimothy.
I just want to make sure we can be intimate and real.
This is real as it gets. This is real as it gets. So we've known each other for a while.
Yeah.
We have to tell the story about how we met.
Okay.
Because it was Christmas Eve.
Christmas Eve.
At Church of the City downtown.
Church of the City. Red flannel jacket.
That's right.
Did you have on anything flannel?
I think I was probably wearing something flannel.
We were wearing something flannel.
Yeah.
It was something flannel.
And it was cold that night.
Yeah, it was very timberish.
Right? It was timberish. And you had on a, it stuck out because you had on a red flannel, like red and black flannel, plus you had on a Bass Pro Shop hat. Red Bass Pro Shop hat.
And then I saw you in the parking lot. I think I had on red shoes.
Probably.
That's how black people, that's how we got to match, at least if not from head to toe.
Right.
It's just,
is that how it is?
You will see the African heritage come out somehow, no matter where we're at in the,
is that
in the
a
world.
thing?
It is a thing. I didn't know it was a thing until I was like, oh, it's a thing. Yeah. So if you ever look at African culture, you see them like in like all the colors and all the I'm like, oh, that's where we get it from. Great. Flannel jacket, red Bass Pro, red Nikes.
So we're going to go back to that in a second. Because we're going to talk a little bit about your story.
Yeah.
Right. Where you came from and all of that sort of stuff. But first, so we met at the parking lot and I saw you and I was like, hey man, you look like some lumberjack relations of mine.
Yeah.
Right. And then we started, and you're like, oh, so, and I said, yeah, I'm in, we both find out we're music and in podcasting.
Yeah. Yeah.
Connected on Instagram. And then I do what I normally do is I kind of show up unnoticed.
Yeah.
Call you. You're in like the airport in Atlanta or something. You're like, oh, hey, Jim. What? And then you're like, well, I'd love to have another conversation. We'd have to sign an NDA. And I'm like, why does this cat who I barely know want me to sign an NDA?
Yeah. Yeah, man.
And that led to some other conversations.
Well, the NDA thing is a real situation only because, and you and I both know this, we live in the creative music, film, brand world, and even now innovations too as well. And so you never know when you're going to hit it off with somebody. You never know. It's like, man, I started talking and I might have spilled some bang somewhere. And I say that because my wife always like checks me. It's like, hey, did you talk about, did he sign? I'm like, oh, no, I feel like we were family. And I kind of get caught on. So that NDA led to just like me sharing kind of what my whole life has been about into this edtech company that we're launching this year. And I kind of sing based off of what you just, shared with me about your past, your history, and things how we were just building our relationship, that you are more than just Jim, you're a man of value. And so that is, where the NDA thing came from. Yeah,
it's, well, and as we're, in business, in the life and creative business development, right? And in all sorts of, everybody says, well, I want to build relationships.
Yeah.
They're like, building relationships is really important to me. And they'll look at me and say, I want to, because I'm in the music business on my side. And it's like, or whatever business I happen to be representing, they're like, well, I really want to get to know you. And I look at that and I say, you want to get to know which part?
Yeah.
Because it isn't really, if somebody wants to get to know somebody else and they're multi-hyphenate like you and I are, or multimedia or whatever it is, entrepreneurial, there isn't just one side. It's just that like there's something in our brain that almost like acclimates, right? And processes.
Yeah.
But let's go back a bit into, but I'm really grateful we're having this conversation today. Yeah. And I know you've told me a little bit about your story. I want to kind of go back and paint a picture of who is Antjuan Robinson.
Yeah.
What has God done in your story and in business? Well, let's kind of start from the beginning. Where'd you grow up?
Yeah, man. I grew up, born in Indiana, Anderson, Indiana, raised in Oklahoma. The fast story is my mom got saved in 1989. She was that kind of project story you would probably find on your nearest station on BET somewhere. A woman with 4 kids sleeping on the floor, no father around, young, on dope, on drugs, and there's a knock at the door from a lady who's still her kind of spiritual mother and woman she still is very mentored by today, who came and knocked on her door and said, "Hey, what do you need?" It was a women's group, and we all know what happens when you have people who are they're destined to help other people through organizations like that. And came by, helped my mom, led her to Jesus, and in one night, almost overnight, my mom got healed, delivered, and saved in one night. Never looked back. Her family thought she went crazy. Who's this Jesus guy? What are you talking about? This you went crazy. You were just at the club smoking and drinking. You know, you talking about you're saved. You got all these kids on the floor.
So she
Uh,
went. So she went. What some people would call cold turkey.
yeah, cold turkey.
And
Like
what do you remember seeing that?
slightly.
Yeah.
I did notice a difference. I
Yeah.
did notice a difference. Um, and there's a longer story to
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
Or probably I will make it into a movie. But literally took 4 kids because the people at that time really didn't understand um, what being saved or this whole Jesus thing is. That it put a red target on the back. Took 4 kids on a Greyhound in the middle of the night and head south.
Wow. Wow. And so, so what is your first? So I know you've got a whole history with music.
Yeah.
Where did the music nuclear? Where did that? What's the genesis of that? Like, how did that
Yeah.
start?
So from what I've heard, the father that I never met, or could fully remember when I was young, maybe one or two. One, he used to, this is my recollection as a kid, is he used to sit me on his lap. He was a DJ in a club.
Mm.
He was a DJ. And my mom used to tell me that. That's how I was like, Mom, how do you know all these songs? Okay, well, there's your little history there. Met my father in a club somewhere. Uh,
So your father's a DJ,
father's a DJ.
a club DJ.
So I grew up probably listening to music, and then
Yeah.
the next thing I can remember before migrating to Oklahoma was I remember going to church. Felt like every day, but it's probably every Sunday. And sitting somehow we were just sitting close to the band, and I remember there was this like 6'5". I mean, I think what I heard, he was a basketball player. He was a bass player, which is crazy. His name was Ray Talbert. This is before Oklahoma. This is before Wayman Tisdale. So I remember love sitting by the band. I'm like, man, what is this thing? And then I used to go home beating on pens and pencils and pots and pans. And next thing along, I found out who Timberland was, the beat
Oh,
maker.
wow.
This is in the 90s and Aaliyah and all these. I'm like, oh my God. I was just beating on everything. So growing up in Oklahoma, I would probably more so reference my life. I tell people that I'm a man of mentors.
Hmm.
I was raised by a wolf pack, I would say, because growing up without that father in my life, there was a point to where um, that was actually prophesied and revealed to me later when I was 30, when I turned 30, that all the men that God sent in my life was a version of God fathering me. There's a very distinct reference why God couldn't let my father me is I needed to get here to maybe to meet you,
Mm.
maybe to meet all the people and have my kids and meet my wife, and on this mission that I'm on right now. And so, growing up in Oklahoma, that's kind of what I found, even with some close friends of mine, is that musical world. My mentors, they were musical.
Mm.
And so I grew up in high school playing cello, always always last chair getting beat up by the girls because I would end up making beats on my cello instead of just playing.
Mm.
I highly regret that because cello is my favorite instrument. And then I migrated into music, uh, learning about another bass player who was 6'5", really 6'6". I was on a basketball trip. I grew up playing basketball. I come from a basketball family.
Yep.
Indiana. My uncle played for Bobby Knight.
Yep.
He was a basketball fanatic, and that just kind of ran through the blood. Naturally, was basketball, while music was integrating. And so being on an AAU basketball trip headed down to Dallas, one of my good friends, who's still a good friend of mine today, 20 years later, geez. Um, I don't know if you can remember this because you're probably too young, but we used to have trapper keepers of CDs,
Oh yeah.
like
Oh
whole
yeah. Oh
booklets of
yeah.
CDs. And I stole one of his. I was used to listening to like Bach and Snoop Dogg at the same
Mhm.
time.
Right.
That was my
Wait. You're, so you're telling me that your mix
my mix.
is Bach and Snoop Dogg?
Snoop Dogg.
Okay.
Yeah, that's how it was orchestral. Yeah, Vivaldi,
Yep.
all of those classic, and then like Snoop Dogg, East Side Boys. Anyway, hear about that later. So, but I picked up the CD, and I remember it was a guy holding a basketball like this.
Mm.
I was like, oh, that's on a CD, a basketball
Mm.
on a CD, and I remember putting it in my CD player, man. And I listened to that thing all the way down from Tulsa to Dallas, 4 hours, and I listened to it all the way back on repeat.
Mm.
And to come into years later, I might have been like 13 around that time. 2, 3 years later, this is where church comes back in. As me and one of my good friends, we're going to a church called um, Higher Dimensions Church from pastor. His name was Carlton Pearson, and this church was like I don't want to say famous church, but it's like when churches started to become really popular and like sexy to go to. You pull up
Was it a
and
mega church, do you think?
it was like one of the first mega church, especially
And this is where?
this is in Tulsa,
This in
Oklahoma.
Tulsa. Okay.
So even the other number one reasons for moving to Tulsa was during the Azusa movement, which I'll tell you about later.
Yeah.
That's what drove my mom and my spiritual grandmother down there to do ministry as well. But this same pastor who created this Azusa conference in Tulsa had a church called Higher Dimensions. Comes from the ORU overhead,
Yes.
split into two kind of a thing. And my friend at the time, or still is one of my good friends today, Mike Ty, he's a pastor at Transformation Church. When he was really young, even still today, he's a virtuoso, I think, on drums. Probably one of the best. And at 15, 16, he played like he was 25, 30. And this guy, Wayman Tisdale, the CD I was listening to all the way down to Dallas and back, I didn't know that he lived in Tulsa. He was ORU, like number one draft player. I mean, the whole thing. You go look him up. He also went to this church, Higher Dimensions. Often, his dad had a church out north and all that, but he seen Mike play and was like, "Man, who's this kid playing drums? I got to get him on a record." And so that's how me and Mike had our first, and I would probably say my first music, real studio experience. Up until that time, me and Mike, which is one of my best friends, like I mentioned, we grew up just making beats.
Wait, so
Into
Mike, Pastor Mike
Pastor
from
Mike Ty.
Transformation, he was a
Yes.
drummer.
He's a drummer, but he's a producer too as well.
Wow. Wow.
So we grew up producing Fruity Loops, Pro Tools, MPC 2000s, MPC 4000s, Triton Extremes.
So you guys were like you guys were really like a little musical hub of. What did that look like? Was that because I know from raising two sons that are musicians that I had to lay down framework of, hey guys, in order for you to get through school, you can only make music on the holidays and long weekends and summertime. So we had like a kind of a guiding principle that you couldn't make music during the school year because you never get your schoolwork done.
Yeah, that was our problem, but it was actually our privilege too. And that's actually how we met. We were in sixth grade, and in the African American culture, one thing that brings us together is not only just food and laughter, but music. And so we have this thing called freestyle. Pretty sure some of y'all know what freestyling is. And every time during like a hall break, everybody would meet up in the bathroom, beatboxing, pens and pencils, beating on the wall on tables. And this day, I was beating on the wall, pens and pencils, and there was somebody else doing the same thing. That was Mike.
So you and Mike were
We
almost,
met.
you guys are operating in the same frequency almost.
We were operating. the same frequency, literally
Yeah.
same frequency.
Yeah.
And we were just beating on the walls, like, oh man, who's this guy?
Maybe you never met him before.
I never met him before. I never
Yeah.
even seen him before. I probably have, but I didn't really. That's where we connected. And it was almost, and this is very vague because it's so long ago, but it's like everybody left the bathroom and it was just me and him. And if we had two things in common, making beats, like, oh man, that's dope. And then our hair. Now my hair looks a little buckwheatish right now.
Wait. Is it okay to say that?
Yes, it is. All white people, you can say black people hair look like
By
buckwheat.
the way, when we're doing this, when we come to social media clips, we're going to have a side-by-side comparison of your head and hair with buckwheat.
Buckwheat. Yeah. So it wasn't
What,
like
you
this.
and Mike, so you and Mike had similar hair?
What we had back then is what we call waves. And so in sixth grade, I was a very poor neighborhood kid, but one thing I had was my hair. Now, if you see my son, he's got really pretty hair, and I got to get him out of the mirror because he has my tendencies. But but I had waves, and I would take such good care of my hair. Like it would look like a little ocean up here. It's the only thing I can get the little ladies to touch. They used to come and touch my hair and like, oh yeah, it's like my thing, And so, but Mike really, he really started digging. It's like, bro, how'd you get your waves like that? I was like, oh, these? I was like, oh man, you're not ready for this, man. You don't want to know that secret. And so we really connected on music and our hair at the moment, which turned into a 20-year plus friendship. He was the best man at my wedding. I was in his wedding, like kind of things like that. Seeing each other, children's been born, the whole thing. So that's what really, I think, catapulted my journey as well. Even to note, growing up without a father, his parents was the first Black couple who was married that I ever seen in my life. And I was
Really?
12. I was 12 by then.
So as a 12-year-old,
Uh,
you've not seen another couple,
Not
Black
at all.
couple.
Yeah. Yeah. And his parents, they're still influential today. Even when we were younger, they used to come to our school and they traveled. They were missionaries, evangelists. They would go to Africa, come back. And my first time seeing them might have been in high school, like ninth grade. They came in the full, goes back to the African color vibe.
Yeah.
They came in the full, what I would call boondagere, like the full African wear. I'm like, who are these coming to America looking people? Like this is, but they came
Because the
with,
only reference point you've had at that point is Eddie Murphy.
all I have is Eddie Murphy, man. New Jack City, Coming to America.
Well, who's the guy in Coming to America? Oh my goodness,
Arsenio Hall.
Arsenio.
That's all I have, man.
Those are like, I don't know, good and bad icons.
Well, that's where that goes into next, because seeing his parents and then seeing them together, and then I didn't know it was his parents until later. When I first seen them, they were in that wear, and then they brought these musical instruments. So there was something else musical about them. And so
it wasn't just that Mike was musical, but his parents were too.
His parents were music. His mom was a singer, still is a singer. His dad was a bass player.
Wow.
And I picked up the bass in their household. That's how I became a bass player, and that's how I synced up with Wayman Tisdale later on.
I mean, was that because you know how some people are about their instruments? Was it sort of like, was it an invitation?
No, it's in a Black house, in a predominantly African American community, especially in the hood or in most general cultures. It's like, hey, bro, that's mine. Like, yeah, try it, go. It's like you learn it, because when me and Mike really became really good friends, I was at his house religiously every day, like inseparable. He had drum sets. I would go back home, nothing. I would get little hand-me-downs every once in a while. I'll take a little bit back, like, oh, we don't use it anymore. Can I take this back and learn to play it? There's a bass about this big. And so two things with that to bring it full circle. I grew up watching TV dads like your Full House, Family Matters, Fresh Prince. So everybody's dad on TV was actually my dad. That's how I learned about and how I got to see what marriage looked like, was off TV. because growing up in that from the late 80s to the early 90s in African American culture, a lot of kids that I knew, none of them had fathers. Zero.
Mm.
Zero. It was just that time of that space and time. Now it's completely opposite. Every man I know is in their child's life. They're the best dads you can ever find. But when going to higher dimensions, full circle, I would go to church with Mike and his parents all the time. They went to higher dimensions. They actually helped launch and start higher dimensions church. Um, that's where Wayman seen Mike. Got to get this kid on the record. We go to the studio and everything changed. That was our first time in a real, not a home bedroom studio.
What is a so for those who aren't familiar with Wayman
Yeah,
Tisdale and his number one, he's a basketball player.
NBA. He was one of OU's top basketball players of all time. You go there and you'll see statues and his jersey up in the rafters. He got drafted to in the NBA, I believe in the late '80s, early '90s, possibly. Um, Sacramento Kings, Phoenix Suns, Indiana Pacers. He was on the same All Star team with Michael Jordan. He passed away in 2009 of complications from cancer. In one of his documentaries, Michael Jordan's in the documentary. Toby Keith, like he's the legends of legends.
Mm.
And I had the privilege to not only learn from him, become his studio technician. I still have a key to the ranch today, to the house in Tulsa. Still a studio there, same studio where he made his records. After he retired from the NBA, he became a famous jazz musician. So not only did he kill and did exceptionally well in college, he went on to the pros. And then after the basketball thing, the music thing was crazy. So he would be talking to Earth, Wind, and Fire, had George Duke on his last record. I mean, Marvin Sapp, like even the guy you see on TikTok and stuff today. Some of the great Fred Hammond, and he actually got me into country music. So I started, when I started to really get into music and producing more, even moving to Nashville, my connectivity to country music comes from Wayman Tisdale.
What was Wayman's like? Was his? They have a similar story where he's growing up in a musical home,
He
or
grew up in a music home. Wonderful mother. Dad was a preacher. You can go if you go to Tulsa now and you see Wayman Tisdale or the Tisdale Highway.
Mhm.
That's after his family.
Okay.
So right north of that, he grew up in there. He played bass at his church.
Wow.
So that 7'5" or 6'5" guy from my church back in Indiana, a guy named Ray Talbert, who that's how I got connected with the bass. I didn't know 10 to 12 years later, no matter what my upbringing was, I was going to meet another 6'9"
Wow.
basketball player who played bass.
So you and Mike go to the studio, and
Go to
Mike's
see
there for drums.
Mike's there for drums. Mike plays on all kind of Wayman's records, ends up producing on Wayman's records too as well. And he was our key to the music industry. He was our key into networking, building relationships. Any kind of little star status we had was from Wayman Tisdale. So Wayman's last name changed my entire life, changed the entire game. Because I had the privilege to reference him, um, so many doors have opened up. I have access to his studio to do records in. It's made a livelihood for my family and I. I think the major thing is that I take away from knowing Wayman was not only his music ability, but his character and personality it's bigger than what he did. It's bigger than what he did. There's only two men I reference in life that I was like, man, if I could ever be like them, I would be pretty decent. It would be Wayman Tisdale and Carlton Pearson. Their personalities, like you just can't shake them. The other thing I learned from Wayman was one of my favorite things I'm even trying to remember today because it helps me be simplistic in business and technology. And is it's not what you play, it's what you don't play.
That's what you don't. It's almost like that reminds me of something that one of my friends, my good friend Dustin Neely says, he told me recently, he functions as my executive coach, right? And he
Yeah.
says, when you're going through that season of time, you're trying to make a lot of decisions about things.
Yeah.
He said, I want to encourage you to focus on only do what only you can do.
Yeah. And Wayman was making that reference because he played at bass, also lead bass player, lead bass, like not bass, but lead bass, like a front guy. But he picked up the acoustic, and I'm like, how is your big Mighty Joe Young gorilla hands playing this acoustic like this? And one, he couldn't tell you what he was playing. Like he didn't know the notes. He just knew by feeling. The second thing was, I said, how are you? And that's where he gave me, he's like, it's not what you play, it's what you don't play. Meaning, the art of being professional or being excellent is not in how much you do something, it's in what you don't do that highlights the thing that you do. So that's one thing I learned from him. It's kind of like that painting. I think of I don't know if it was Leonardo da Vinci or Michelangelo. One of these artists was staring at a piece of granite for a long piece of time, and they were like, "Hey, what are you doing?" And they slowly started to realize that he wasn't painting this picture. He was actually extracting from what wasn't the picture, and that's how you get. I forgot the model, but I was like, "That's exactly what Wayman was saying over here." So my whole musical nature stemmed from that. Professionality came from Wayman, learning from an executive producer, musician that got me into building studios locally in Tulsa. From downtown, I have my own studio called London Square Studios. And then I end up connecting with a band called Stars Go Dim, 2014, I think, maybe 13 or 14, I think 13. And that band some of the members out of that band was from the band Pillar, which you probably know or probably sound familiar. And I started producing them and working with them and traveling with them a little bit. And that was our first take to the Christian music industry, coming from pop to the Christian pop side, which is a whole thing by itself. Right. So that was my physical foot into the door of the music industry, was through that band and producing some of the songs to help us get to showcases and different things like that. That was my first record label, music video, full record experience as a bass player and producer. And so that's how I got to Nashville, man. That was my ticket into Nashville. Was from that, but it was really from the roots of what guys like Wayman Tisdale and still my best friend Mike Todd, and still like all those nights where we stood up to 3, 4 a.m. in the morning trying to figure out what the heck is Fruity Loops, how to transfer files, like all of those moments came to those moments. And so
so let's go back to, I just want to touch base sort of, or to connect about when you were, all this stuff is happening, Stars Go Dim and all, obviously you got the Wayman part. When it came to relationships, let's talk about your personality.
Okay.
What is do you know what your Enneagram is?
I'm an 8.
You're an 8, all right. And you know
I know that I wasn't always an 8. I was made this way.
Okay.
I was
so
definitely
you were
made this way.
molded to be this way. What do you think the type of personality you were when you were younger? Were you, because I could be wrong, but you don't appear to me to be super extroverted.
No, I was probably more likely a 9 in another lifetime.
Yeah.
Real laid back, didn't want to be in the way.
Yeah.
Real I was a kid in my room taking apart VCRs, tape players, big screen televisions, and putting them back together. Computers. I was a nerd, really, really geeky nerd. And when I found a purpose for that nerdness, it molded into music. So I have 2 entrepreneurial endeavors that I did, or entrepreneurial journeys that I didn't know was entrepreneurial until later in my years, which was one, building custom music computers. Now, I didn't pay for any of the software. We were accustomed and afforded to have LimeWire, Napster, Now, this is not. We're not endorsing anything, but this is my hustle in the hood. This is how we had to roll. So when my friends, even Mike and everybody's finding out, like, oh, you can build your own computer, and you can put free loops in it, and I get all the software. I was like, yeah. They were like, how much? I said, what do you mean, how much? Ding. And I was making computers left. Everybody in the hood had one. Mike had one. I had one, and if everybody needed any sounds,
So
bro,
this is like you got to go see my guy Antjuan
I was the
because he can
handler.
build you a tower. You were building custom towers for people.
The full from the ground up, man. I was the Bill Gates of the hood. Like literally, I have computer parts everywhere. I would go to use computer part stores and build these computers, man. And the second thing was I was a barber. So with my basketball, I played basketball in high school, middle school, all the way up to high school. And so I was really, really good, I think. Now my son and my wife doesn't know this, but I was. Uh, but I would cut the basketball players and the football players and also different people around my neighborhood's hair because we couldn't afford to go to the barbershop. So my next door neighbor taught us how to cut hair. He was young and he was into basketball. So that you see that lineage connection, especially when you grow up in environments where there's zero to none value being shown. And if it was, they're probably off already to the league somewhere or getting a signing bonus and there's nothing else. But there are other gems in the hood when it comes to brotherhood and little skills you learn, like cutting your own hair, making your own music, things like that.
But
And just
the other thing too, did you find when you cut people's hair that they would tell you things? You know, it's like the
yeah,
bartender
yeah.
barber
We
shop,
talk about girls, we talk about life,
right?
talk about music. Um,
And you also find that in some of that was almost like training for like listening,
yeah, yeah.
right?
Now as you say it, yeah. I didn't know that, but my next door neighbor who I credit as one of my mentors, and there's probably about 20, 30 men sitting here in this chair. He was probably the first. A lot of people thought he was weird in the hood because he would talk all the time, Bible and about just like life, and you couldn't tell, like, man, are you telling the truth or what? But I took a liking to it. One, it was kind of comforting to me. One, to have a male just sit and talk to me. I remember sitting on the staircase at our apartments for, I'm not exaggerating, for 1 to 2 hours just listening to him talk. At least we call him Brother Mark.
So brother Mark is just a guy sitting out. He's just sitting out talking, or is he talking to
Yeah.
anybody?
He was the neighborhood guy who knew everybody and could tell you all the stories.
Got it.
That he was that guy in our neighborhood. And every neighborhood, I don't care where you're from, everyone's got that guy who kind of knows a little, oh yeah, that's old John down
That's
the
right.
block. Kind of
That's right. Or that house has been out. Oh, that house has been abandoned for years.
that guy.
Right.
That
Right.
guy. For me, it was a guy named Brother Mark. His brother Nikendo was my barber. Mark was very, very knowledgeable in a lot of different things, whether they were true or not.
Isn't that the thing though that like sometimes it's like I remember my dad used to like sing little things, almost like little little
Yeah.
like things,
Yeah.
parents, we all do
Yeah.
it,
Yeah.
or people in your life do it, and they have things that they say, and then
Yeah.
you go drive by someplace
Yeah.
where your dad grew up, and you're like, you see this sign, and
Yeah.
you're like, that's where they got this.
That's where they got. Yeah.
And sometimes we're passing on things. I know my own kids
Mhm.
would used to go and ask me to tell stories that I told them growing up. They used to go and
Yeah.
ask me to tell that to their friends,
Wow.
like jokes that I would make.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think that some of that passed on knowledge about things, but then you're still years later, you're like, gosh, I wonder if that was true.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
Like, and sometimes we're dealing with, especially when sometimes we're dealing with faith or with truth and other things. It's like, that people twist things.
Mm.
And I think you see that a lot in film and TV. A lot of
Mhm.
film and TV scripts are written around the idea of the twist.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
and it's the polar extremes that we see.
Yeah.
You have characters like Seinfeld that did really well because they were so hyper extreme.
Yeah. Oh, it's one of my favorite
George
shows.
and Elaine and
Oh.
Kramer and Jerry and Newman, like these are all
Oh,
and the apartment building.
yeah.
But if you took the where you grew up in the hood in
Hmm.
Tulsa, I just had this notion. I'm like, is it okay for me to say hood?
Yeah, no,
Because
bro.
I grew up in the country.
Yeah,
I
man.
grew up out in the woods where it was like almost like probably the same sort of people, but
Yeah,
it was like, in the trailer park
yep, yep.
sometimes. But uh so let's go back to you can edit that.
Yeah,
That'll
no, you're fine.
happen. So so you've got multiple things going on at this
Hmm.
point. And so now we're talking about Antjuan. Some people might say the hustler.
Yeah.
You if you met the younger version of you now, that's the hair, cutting hair, computers,
Hmm.
music, and all these things, what advice would you have for a young person that's entrepreneur driven, that was where you're at, knowing what you know now? What would you tell them?
You know what's crazy is God has a way of always sending you a you.
Mm.
Um, and I've seen that multiple times throughout my life, and I know what I'm looking at. And what I would tell that person is don't forget what you're learning now. Don't forget what you're interested in right now. If you don't think it makes sense now, in the future, it'll all make sense. In the future, it'll all make
So it's
sense.
almost like don't overthink it.
Don't overthink it. Stay creative. You won't know all the things. Listen more and keep exploring, keep being curious.
Is there anything musically that you did when you were younger that you wish you would have like expanded on further, or since then have you expanded on?
Man, there's one regret, but here's where the spirit of God comes in. Because God knows how to work stuff out that don't make sense. The only thing I regret is not taking cello more serious because I just love it. It's so sophisticated and it's sexy. If you can play cello, just bust it out like it's just you're an amazing person. That's just me. But even how I got to play for the band We Are Messengers was not me chasing music. It was about more of who I was than what I could do.
Hmm.
So I got a call, and this is after uh, building churches, starting visions, playing for bands, being techie. I've played in some of the nastiest bars in West Texas you can ever imagine. To playing in some very large churches at the same time. Like it's very stark contrast. Everything about me is just extreme here. Nobody will ever know about this thing here.
But you're getting paid to gig, like you're part of the
Paid to
band. You're
gig,
getting
part of the band, making a living that way. But where things really started to change is when I was really on a self discovery mode of becoming somebody with um, not just more value, but somebody with a purpose. That's when everything changed. That's when everything I did with my hands started to make sense. When I started to go on self discovery, that was after I was leaving Transformation Church. After Mike got a vision to start and launch Transformation Church, revitalize it. Was my first time coming up under and serving a vision and a man's vision, and it just happens to be my one of my best friends. And I'm like, okay, what am I learning from this? Like, what am I? I still feel empty. I still feel like I'm not done yet. I feel like I haven't done anything yet. Like other people think it's amazing. I'm thinking like, okay, what's next? Like, who am I? And so it wasn't until I started becoming on that self journey of like who I was that I can even tell my younger self to say, hey, keep going. Because then even that was like maybe 8 years ago. I'm 38 now. I feel 58. Jeez. But really wasn't that long ago that mental mindset shift started to happen. That one that there was more in me and there was something I am to do.
is there so just looking back though, like let's take like you and Mike
Yeah.
growing up with somebody like that. Do you think there's some things that happened because you guys were always talking like almost in like a cohort type of thing?
Yeah.
You think some of that development happened because you were always you were doing it with somebody else?
Probably
You had
so.
that community?
Yeah, yeah. And I was the mutt out of all my friends. Like if I went back in time and I looked at my life retrospect, the friends that I had at the time, it was like their own multiverse. Like I was the kid, like yeah, I grew up in the hood, but then I would go to Mike's house, and in this world, it's a different set of group of people. Like church, music, creative, all that's where I met my wife at in this group. And then I would hang out with my boy Zach, white, Fox News, guns and country, uh, amazing civilized people, wealthy. I go to his barn with his dad and we go hunting, or not hunting, but like fishing and barrel hay. Like and they never cross paths. Just complete. Kyle, who's lived here now, that was Stars Go Dim, We Are Messengers, Nashville. It's a completely different world. So when it comes to connecting and listening and really adapting, even studying into my brand and more about me, one of my two animals I would connect with would be a lion that looks like a chameleon. I can shapeshift a lot. So like, that's where if I'm here, I can be an extrovert. If I'm over here, I'm most likely an introvert.
So do you find that understanding yourself,
Yeah.
old Graybeard's into the self-awareness thing,
Come on, man.
and
That's where we
really
live.
deep into it. Let's just unpack. I want to like unravel that a bit in the sense of like, do you think that have you ever had a problem explaining yourself, like who you are to others?
I never even tried that.
Yeah.
I
Like
never even
I don't
tried that.
believe that you even care about that. You're actually it seems like you're more focused on the
You know what's crazy? I'm about to admit this secret.
hold on, secret time with Antjuan Robinson.
You know, this is wild. People that I know, and I don't know if maybe you feel like this. You probably do. The people I know don't know the people I know.
Yes.
I'm saying it like this. Most people don't know what I do. My family doesn't know what I do. If I'm around my family, they talk musically. And they call me nicknames like Twani. Over here, these people call me Twan, but they know me as a creative. They know a little bit about my musical background. If I'm with these set of groups of people, they know maybe musically and like my sports background, like from back in the
Well,
day.
it's interesting because I remember a night when I called you because I had an event going on the next day, and I needed a shooter
Yeah.
for that event, and you're like, "Well, do you want me to bring out the big guns?" And I was like, "If we're talking about the big guns, then yes, let's bring out the big guns." And then you showed up with like the sliding camera and the gimbal and some of the gear we're using today to shoot this podcast.
Oh, this is small garden.
This is like
I brought out a farm.
you brought out like it was like, you show up at somebody's house and you think that like, hey, we're gonna have a barbecue, and you show up and they've got like it's catered. You show up and
Hey,
you're
hey,
like not the caterer, but you're like the guy who built the food truck or
yeah.
something.
Hey, can I borrow your car? Yeah, and I pull up with a leased Maserati.
This is like I was like, this is not
Your
we're not
Honda.
dealing with the
Yeah.
soldiers, we're actually dealing with the colonel.
Yeah.
Or another analogy of like that I really like is like, we're dealing with the professor, not the students.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. But it was in the way that you handled everything that day. I was like, okay, this guy's this guy's like me. And it's funny because what I do a lot of times is I have a lot of my intellectual properties in my brain. It's
Yeah.
not physical.
Yeah.
It's why I work out, and it's
Yeah.
why I walk 30 miles a week, because I have to like manifest that, and it manages the stress, and it manages the creative process.
For sure.
And so I have to have a lot of things like that in my life. But having a friend like you that I can go quickly from the concept to execution to actually like physical manifestation, we can do that fast.
Yeah.
Now, when you met your wife,
Okay.
When you met Kaila,
Hmm.
has she ever been like, who is this guy? Because he's the. When did she come into the story?
She came into the story 20 years ago. It's crazy. I actually met her. Of course, Mike Todd. He's a musical. I would say I almost rolled out naturally, musical genius. But he was in a band during that time, a gospel group, and they did a couple tours around the country, kind of the lower part of the country, Texas, Florida, things like that, Louisiana. They happened to minister or perform at a church in Miami area, which was a church where my wife went. Her parents were at the time. My wife was in her first year at ORU, and so when Mike's parents met my wife's parents, like, oh, we have a daughter that goes to ORU. You know, she would love to meet somebody down there close to home. Maybe she can meet some friends and have some friends and have more friends.
Is that what they sounded like?
Probably so.
With that tone of voice. Is that what your future mother-in-law sounded like?
Yeah. That's exactly what it was, man. When she went back, she got connected with him. They invited her over to a birthday thing with all the group. And so they invited me over, but I'm a broke, rundown, stanky 4-day draws wearing producer.
Wait. What did you say? You're a stinky what?
I was stanky 4-day draws wearing producer. Like, I was a
4-day
producer.
draws.
I probably didn't move from my computer in 4 days. You know what I'm talking about.
Oh, I do.
Yeah,
I
you
do.
do.
I just the visual on that.
I don't even know how I'm going to get to this party. I got no car. I got no money. I still don't know how I got there.
Yeah.
I get there. Of course, they invite her over. Somebody goes to pick her up from school. I walk in and I walk around. It's kind of like this setup where there's like a down inlay kind of part, or like a little, I don't know what you call the where you go down is. Anyway, it's kind of like a couch like that. It's like
Split level.
Split level.
There you go.
I walk around the entire thing and I come around to the big couch and they're playing the game Taboo. And I'm like, okay, what are y'all doing here? What is going on here? And I look at Kaila and she smiles. It was like a little friendly, just, oh, hey, somebody new here. To her, it was like nothing. To me, it was everything. To her, it was completely nothing. To me, it was like, oh, there's deer here. Hey.
So you had like a deer in the headlights moment.
Hey, you know where I get the theme, the big game?
Yeah, the big game. So by the way, the big game is kind of a I guess a sort of inside joke, but my so talking about differences in how we're raised. My grandfather on my mom's side was basically a professional big game hunter in California.
Okay, yeah.
And he had a job working for both the feds and the county as a predator control officer. And he went out and hunted down animal predators that were hunting livestock on big ranches.
Oh, wow.
And so, as I've been explaining to you about how I think about work and relationships and stuff like that, we created this analogy called the big game. Yeah. And it's sort of allows me to like think about, when you're doing all this different business development, being an entrepreneur, how do you gotta, well, first of all, you gotta go know who you're scouting. You gotta know what you're hunting for.
You gotta know what you're hunting.
Where are they? Where are you going?
Yeah.
How do you talk to them?
Yeah.
Do you know anybody that knows them? Mm-hmm. And then the reverse of that, because I have people that are asking me, do you know so-and-so? Can you introduce me to them? Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And so we kind of designed the big game that way.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. She was the big game for me, man.
She was the first stage big game.
Well, as soon as I laid my eyes on her, in my mind, I said, that's my wife. I mean, it was almost like, oh yeah, that's mine.
And you're how old at this point?
I might have been 18 or 19.
Okay.
Somewhere around there, 2006. Just broken up over kind of a hard little high school relationship, puppy love thing. And probably about a year and a half, some change went by. And as soon as I seen it, I was like, that's it. I don't know how, but that's it. And so that's how I met her.
And probably Kayla's story is nothing. She's like, "Oh, I see this guy and I smile
This
at him," and then he
stinky producer walks in. And there's a whole backstory which I'll
Yeah, yeah,
share
yeah, yeah,
later. I
yeah,
think it's
yeah,
probably
yeah.
on my channel somewhere, but
Um,
magical.
so you're so let's talk about in all of this, you've got faith.
Yeah.
Your faith is I know knowing you, it's like your faith is like almost like now it's a natural component of your life.
Yeah.
What is your if you were gonna sit down with somebody and tell them what your faith life looks like now, what
Mm,
is your daily, if somebody comes to Antjuan Robinson and says, "Man, I'm really struggling with my faith,"
yeah.
what do you what would you share with them that's important?
You don't struggle with faith. People don't struggle with faith. People struggle with imagination. Let me say it like this: faith is the substance hoped for, the evidence of
Essence.
something you can't see.
That's right.
What are you hoping for? If you're struggling with faith, what that means is you can't see something. You can imagine something. I'm saying this because I'm kind of hot off the press because of this. I just coming from this other podcast meeting where our first step on this ladder analogy is faith, but it leads to imagination. Faith is the substance hoped for, meaning if I have money on a credit card, I can't see that cash. But when I swipe, I hope that there's
You become a believer. You're like, I hope that this works. Because you can't see it, but you know it's there.
Wait a second. Let me use my tap. Maybe that card didn't work. Let me use. Do you guys got chip in here? Yeah. I hope there's at least $2 or $3 on this bag. So that's what faith is hope for. So if somebody's struggling with their faith, that means you've been around either nothing or someone without imagination or without the power to vision anything. So when we get around, it takes about 5 minutes for,
Yeah.
oh, I didn't see that.
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
that's it.
That's I think part of the reason that whether it's my faith or self-awareness or self, care or whatever it is,
Yeah.
sometimes the reason that I've been able to like there's sometimes I'm making leaps
Yeah.
because I can do it in my head.
Yeah.
Thomas Hardy, who's an author, he calls it the mental gymnast.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. And it's this idea that you could, but then you got to be careful because when you're talking to people, you also got to be careful. We all know this. There's sometimes we have thoughts in our head and we're like, oh, yeah, and that's right.
Yeah. Yeah.
But it's actually something you haven't actually verified or validated. It's just
Yeah.
a thought in your own head.
Yeah.
But yeah, faith, faith is also something that's not, I think we struggle as humans because it's not tangible.
Yeah.
It's like, it's like this cup.
Yeah.
It's like, I know the cup's there.
Yeah.
I can reach
Yeah.
for it.
Yeah.
But other things are like, we make a disconnect with God in the sense of like, we're always pushing ourselves to believe in him.
Mm-hmm.
And we're pushing others to believe in him.
Yeah.
But do we see do we reciprocate that into, do we believe in ourselves the way that God believes in us? I mean, think about everything that God gave up to have a connection.
Well, that's
with
that
us.
second part of the engine.
Right.
So there's two parts of faith.
I stole your thunder a little bit.
No, you added to the lightning. That's how we roll.
That's right.
That's how we roll. No, that's the second part is that belief. So there's imagination and there's belief. Faith is the substance or the thing hoped for. What's the thing? As soon as you think of the thing, it's in your imagination. Now, between faith and imagination, there's a little power switch. It's called belief. So if we were saying, how's your faith in a religious sense, it would be more so, how's your faith in God, in your imagination? How does God working out in your life? How's God performing or coming through and keeping his promises in your life?
And are we visualizing? Are we imagining and are we manifesting and asking for, give me the dreams.
Come on, man.
Give me the ideas. Give me a lot of times when I'm in church, I'm having thoughts about, I'm getting reminders like, this is not about you anymore.
Yeah.
This hasn't been about you. Us being it all being about you, it hasn't been in a long time. You now need to like start manifesting the evidence that, 2 Corinthians chapter 1, verses 4 and 5, paraphrased, I comfort you so you can comfort others.
Mm,
Period. It's like
mhm,
in comfort, in the same comfort you found in Jesus, you're going to like turn around and you're going to extrovert that to others,
mm,
whatever form, social media, podcasting,
mhm,
conversations, life on life discipleship,
mhm,
and really investing that
mhm.
into others.
Yeah.
It's almost like God gave me a download,
Mhm.
and my job is to like get that known
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
that it can touch others. And the energy and the passion with which we do something, how we own that and how we steward that is
Yeah.
really important.
Yeah. Yeah.
So going back to this idea, which I love about the imagination and faith.
Yeah. Yeah. In the beginning, God created. When he created man, he said, let's create man in our image, imagination, to look like us in our mind. Like how would they in our likeness to be like us? Like how it's like I love how that sounds real like divine and real goddish, but watch it. If you continue on, oh son, Adam had a son in his image and in his likeness. And he keeps on going with the genealogy with that same language. Okay, prove it. My son Duke is over there. If I wasn't in the room and Duke was in the room and I walked in and people go,
Mm-hmm.
is this your son?
Mm-hmm.
That makes sense.
You know, I mean, there's pictures up there on
Yeah,
the floating shelf up there of my kids, and people
yeah,
are like, "Oh man, they look a lot like you," and I'm
yeah,
like, "I'm so sorry, guys."
yeah,
You know, and they also, the funny
yeah.
thing is, not only do they look like you,
No,
when they when other people you introduce them, and they talk to you like at a party or something, you talk
yeah,
to your kids, they're like, oh my gosh,
yeah,
they even make jokes like you do,
yeah.
and they talk like you, because you think about it,
Got your
as
likeness.
a parent, you spent your whole life
Yeah,
like pouring into them,
yeah, yeah,
right?
yeah,
And they're going to be a lot like,
yeah.
unless there's something that happened that you don't want, you know. I want to know, like, you as a so talk about how you met Kayla,
Mhm,
as a talking a little bit about faith. We're going to go back to that in a second, because it
mhm.
all is
Oh yeah,
the faith is the
the faith journey is
river.
crazy.
The faith is the river that powers, it powers the turbine that
Hmm.
powers our lives,
Hmm.
right, in a
Hmm.
sense. So let's go back a bit and talk about,
Hmm.
I want to connect some of your origin story with the current.
Yeah,
You're a dad.
yeah.
You have 3 children.
Hmm.
We're just talking about Duke Morgan, your son, and
Hmm.
about, you know, being made in the image of God and things like that.
Hmm.
You have 3 kids. You grew up in a home where you had no dad,
Hmm.
right? But
Yeah,
you had father figures around.
yeah. Lot.
How did you get to where you are now with the father journey?
Yeah. Um, it was from watching other fathers. I had really, really good role models. And I just had a different sensory of like paying attention to men too, like growing up.
Mm,
Um, I've been around some really good dads, man. I've seen some really good
mm,
dads. And dads who took me on as kind of their own. Like even for Wayman, for instance, like even the last record, the only record I put out was one of my own, and realizing that, oh, I only not got to inherit being around Wayman, but I kind of inherited his sound. Like
mm.
this is passed down. I have business leaders and spiritual leaders that pass that down to me too as well. And one of those biggest thing was that they all had in common is that they love their children.
Mm.
They were there, especially when I met Mike, Mike's parents, Tommy Todd, Wayman Tisdale. From that moment on, I just only seen great fathers
Mm.
to highlight even African American fathers, because there was a point where I didn't see any daddy,
Mm.
and then I didn't see dads, and then I seen fathers, which is a different ball game.
Yeah.
It's a different ball game. And so, yeah, man, I learned from them. When I was 30, going back to that story, my cousin took me out to eat after church, and he revealed to me, it's like, man, I always wanted to tell you why you were a really good dad. And before he can really utter it, I just bawled like a baby because I knew what he was about to say.
Mm.
He said, there's a reason why God wouldn't let your father father you.
Mm.
This is my first kind of prophetic moment. And as soon as he said it, I wept like a child. and because it all came rushing back, like all the mentorship I had, all the Wayman Tisdales, the Pastor CJ's, the Kevin First, men who used to pick me up from basketball games and drop me off. There was men who picked me up for church and dropped me off. There was
Mm,
men who I sat on
mm,
stairs and listened to for hours
mm.
and hours. Like it just all came like, oh God, like you wasn't here physically, but you sent wolves along the
Yeah,
way to make sure I made
yeah.
it through the winter.
Man, I have a memory of, we didn't have much when I was probably in 8th grade
Yeah.
at a basketball tournament. And I remember that, my stepmom had sent me out that day,
Hmm.
and, we were living in a trailer park outside of town, and
Yeah.
I don't think things were very good.
Yeah.
Because I know now what it's like to feed a family and
Yeah.
to feed myself here years later.
Hmm.
But I remember, getting on the bus that day to go to the basketball tournament. It was a Saturday, and the only thing I had is probably in my backpack or something. I had a peanut butter and jelly sandwich,
Hmm.
and all the other guys, they were going to the store or whatever. And my friend says, "Hey, just come with us," whatever. And we
Hmm.
get down to the store, and the guys are doing stuff, and I was like, I felt really awkward, and I just
Hmm.
said, I think I lost my wallet, and I
Hmm.
just left.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
unbeknownst to me, one of the other students, um, those people sometimes do good things, but they're not always good people.
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
People sometimes surprise you.
Yeah.
And this kid went back to his dad, and he's like, "Hey, Dad, I think Jim Gray either lost his wallet or he probably doesn't have any money, and
Hmm.
I'm just worried about him."
Yeah.
And his dad, I never forget it, came up to me almost like very subtly and put his arm on my shoulder and says, "Hey," and he was a Missouri boy in California, and
Mm-mm.
he's like, "Hey, Jim," he says, "Scott says that you lost your wallet or whatever happened," and he goes, "I just want to buy you something to eat." I'll
Mm.
never forget that. I've
Mm.
extended so much to people because of
Mhm.
people like that
Yep, yep, yep,
that had no reason to do it,
yeah.
and people like that are good people.
The Midwest people are different.
Oh yeah, yeah. Because
They're a
some
little different,
people,
man.
yeah, it's a deep thing. And when I'm
Yeah,
doing when I'm thinking about who I want to emulate
yeah,
as people that I look to, I've got people in my family. Like
yeah.
I've got men in my family, that were the hunter. I've got my grandfather on my dad's side that's the logger,
Mhm,
the logging woods boss, and my dad and my uncle, and
mhm,
just great great men who were kind of wild in some
mhm,
ways and legends. But I knew all of them loved me.
mhm,
They'd
mhm.
do anything for me. When you
Yeah,
have that sort of thing behind you, there's a lot of things you can go through life that are negative if you
mhm.
have knowledge of love.
Yeah, yeah,
And it but we often forget about that.
yeah,
Sometimes we forget about the journey.
yeah.
Has there ever been a time when you were in a funk, or sort of like you were disconnected from what had happened, all that investment of people and mentors? Have you ever felt disconnected from all that at times?
When I left Transformation Church, and me and my family, we moved to Nashville. My wife was pregnant. I moved on my birthday, and it took a little while for the dust to settle. So we just gave 2.5 years of like straight our lives, like, oh, the church is doing this. I guess this is a pretty cool church. Everybody's liking it. It's growing. Cool. We're on to the next thing. And picking that up in Nashville, where I'd sell my truck, got a baby on the way, stepping fully back into entrepreneurship after serving for 2.5 years and trusting into God. I ran in, I ran into, for the first time in my life, anxiety, depression, and stress. The first time I like really tasted it and notified, like I'm stressed and
Because
anxiety.
I think everybody that knows you, at least in my world, like we all know you. Like we have friends that like you've collaborated with that I introduced you to, and those people have come back to me and says, "Oh, he's like an Energizer bunny, super laid back." And
Mm, hmm.
you and I both know that I know that I could call you because you're pretty even keel,
Yeah,
but nobody's invincible,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
right? And so what do you think happened in that time? Like how did you how did you spin out of that?
Yeah, man. That's when I went. if I don't know if you remember the movie Batman. I think it's Batman Begins.
Yeah.
Um, with Christian Bale,
Yeah.
and he's in the cave. Every man who's getting ready to go on this a road of self discovery or getting ready to change into somebody who's never been before has got to go through the Batman Begins moment where it's like I'm in a cave fighting for my life. I'm starting all over. This does not look familiar. Who am I? What am I? What am I trying to do? I know what I can do. I know what I want to do ish, but there's something else out there that's like waiting for me to like arise to like the next thing. And that transition from Tulsa after building what becomes a mega church, and I leave with nothing, no pension, no stock, like no friends sold us off, like come, hey, dinners, like nothing. It was just like dead silence. Like, um, I heard my thoughts louder.
Mm.
I heard some other like, whoa, who is that? Like, and I remember I picked up back into the AV world and I was starting to fly out. I couldn't, bro. I was getting on planes thinking that I was about to die and what was going to happen with my kids. Bro, my mind was just gone. And the only thing that can get me back was two things: my wife's prayer, which I found out later she was always praying for me, even though I was probably stressing out with the baby. Um,
Where you think you're feeling extra pressure because of the child coming?
we were staying with her mom,
Oh, okay,
and they had no money coming in
Yeah.
really, and it's like the re-engine
What
up.
were you going to do for income? What was your plan?
I had no idea. Today, I still have no idea. That's where the faith comes in, and so literally during that time, over the last probably 8 to 9 years, I've watched myself and my wife. I watched myself turn into like 7 to 8 different guys.
The
Until-
chameleon, the lion
chameleon.
with the chameleon's head.
The lion with the chameleon's head. Someone who needed to grow and mature and understand not only myself but people differently. One who had to understand why I'm multi-gifted, multi-talented, multi-creative. Like why can't I just pick the thing? Because none of the things picked you. Because you were supposed to take all the things and make the thing to help others just like you who are multi-talented, multi-gifted, extraterrestrial.
Almost inhuman at times. Like,
Yeah.
you run into somebody and they're like,
Yeah.
oh, you're doing music now, but we knew you when you were.
Well, a lot of us forget the stories in the Bible, and I always revert back to this, so much so, um, where the master gives one talent, then he gives another one two, and then he gives that other one five. Jim, I'm the one with five. I help the one figure out what to do with the one. I help the two figure out what to do with the two. And it was hard for me to figure out what I do with all five of mine, but now I know. I super know. And it takes longer. The investment in compounding interest takes a little bit longer, but when it multiplies, you can't stop it. And one of my core knowings is that God has gifted me multi abilities from multi different people and men and experiences. Remember, I go back to, man, I feel like I lived in multi different dimensionals growing up. Literally, church, gospel, all black people, all black friends. In the next small season, I'm on the south side of town in a $500,000 house, listening to a whole nother group of people. And I didn't know I was building cultural.
Oh, yeah, because south side of Tulsa is much different than the other side.
Oh, you know.
I know.
I know. Okay, good.
Yeah.
The East, like, I was like, man, I'm so, it's like a mutt a little bit. Don't know where I belong a little bit. And so that's even today, the businesses that you see that we have, one, they're all different. They all have a DNA of my skills and gifts. Eagle Eye with AV, Central Coast with creative and filming and all that. And then there is a course that is a overall network platform that creates online course and educations. Remember, I didn't graduate high school. I walked.
Okay, let's talk about that for a second.
Okay.
I've heard you say this before.
Yeah.
So you didn't graduate high school. Did you do the GED?
I don't know what GD means.
I don't either, but it was like a test. Did you take a test? I just know it's a test. Did you take a test to graduate? How did you graduate? You walked. Did you get a diploma?
I have a transcript. That's all I have. And it says 1.97 something. And I think we needed a 2.0 to cross the line.
So you're telling me you've done everything you've done without technically graduating high school. You never went back to fix it, apparently.
I knew exactly what I wanted to do.
Did you go to college?
Never set foot. I've taught at colleges. I've shared at colleges, but I've never. And when I mean taught, it's like coming and do maybe like a little clinic. I did some music production stuff. Yeah.
So you've done everything you've done, because our society says you graduate school, so you go to school all those years, and you graduate graduate elementary school, junior high, high school, go to college.
I used to show up with. The only thing I loved about school was basketball. I give it that. I showed up to school with 2 laptops, one with contracts, musical contracts, so I can learn how to read them, and then the other one with Fruit Loops on it.
At high school.
High school.
You're taking a laptop to high school. You got 2 laptops to go to high school.
2 laptop compact Windows. This is before I find out anything about Mac computers. But yeah, man, boom, basketball, laptops. That's all I needed. And so as soon as I didn't think about my next steps. I did not think twice about, where am I going to school? What type of job I has? I was like, when me and Mike met Wayman, we were like, we know what's happening. Oh, we know what to do. School, man. We got Wayman. What are we talking about? Let's just go to the studio and grind it out. That's exactly what happened.
What? Okay. Where's your mom? Where's your parents? Your mom and all this?
My mom's working 2 jobs. She's at church somewhere, trying to do the best she can. After 15, I'm pretty much taking care of myself. I didn't realize that till now.
Were there any men or coaches or anybody like that who's going hey man, if you don't keep your grades up, you can't play ball? Or is any of that sort of accountability?
Oh yeah. But I was a little hard-headed. Yeah. I was my son, super hard-headed. I heard what they were saying, but I didn't understand the value. Because when I go home, it's not repeatable. I only heard it on the court until I met Wayman. He brought my basketball love and my music love together. And then he was a father. I said, what is this? This is different. I can hear this guy.
So it's almost like you saw in him, you could see all the best practices.
Yeah, man.
If I do this over a period of time and invest in that I would be, you could see it.
Yeah.
You have people that you can see even in your memory.
Yeah.
Even though he's gone for a while.
Yeah.
You have that memory. It's strong.
It's a picture on the wall.
Right.
And so, all of our businesses come out of that. Even Faith Today. I've never called a human for services before. You can look through the record. I never say, hey, do you need your music produced? Or hey, do you guys need a website? Hey, your church needs a new? Never. After I got the experience with Stars Go Down, and I seen what God did through faith and vision at Transformation Church. Even more, this is 2015. In the last probably 10 to 12 years of being in full, for real business, I have never called anyone. It's been literally off of God, whoever you send me, because I'm not that skilled. I'm not that talented to go look for business. I'm a little, now music I can do, but this other stuff, I don't.
But that's why we created the big game.
That's where the big game comes in.
That's why it's all about relationship dynamics, right?
Yeah. And that's what it's always been. Yeah. And so when I started to realize, even, playing for Real Messengers, when I learned I was different is when this moment really happened. This is 2021. I started to realize another gift that I have, and it was who I was. It wasn't my skill. Darren Mulligan calls me, and I'm in Nashville. I didn't do one thing musical. Wasn't really planning on it. Even though I have a music production, I can play bass. I can play a bass.
Yeah.
Wasn't looking for anything. It's all about the vision that God has given me. And so I get this call, and Darren calls me. And he says, "Hey man, I went on you," and he didn't even tell me he was looking for a bass. No, yeah, he did. He said, "Man, I really need a bass player, somebody I can trust, somebody I can count on to at least get me through the end of the year." And he says, "Man, I went on your Instagram and I just seen what type of man you were. No audition, no send me in a tape, no none of that."
Because of your character?
He's seen how I watched and talked about my wife on Instagram,
Mhm.
how I loved my kids, and now that granted me a ticket. And from that moment, I'm like, is that how people see me even with business? Like they trust me that well because of who I am, that they will give me these high-end six-figure opportunities. So that really perked me up. One, I need to be able to execute at a high level. Two, come through, follow through, but also be a man of my word, building character, protect the vision, add value, all these other things.
What did going out with We Are Messenger, did it teach you anything? Like, what was that experience like?
All I, every experience in my life is none the same. It's a different multiverse. It taught me how to be. It taught me better leadership skills. Even coming into the band, seeing some of the problems that was there. Luckily, I learned how to serve in a church because it taught me how to serve another leader differently with a different problem. Darren had a completely different problem. He wanted men he can trust. He wanted more accountability. He wanted uh, help to protect and really harvest what God was blessing him with, which was him growing in stature, him growing in notoriety and popularity among the people, among the music industry as a writer, as a singer songwriter. He needed protection. Really, he needed men around him who can protect what God was giving him, not only on the outside but also on the inside. And I think me and several of the other men, my boy Kyle, like we gave Darren a sense of like, bro, you got this. Like you here, but we watching. Like, hey, bro, what are you doing? Like tough love because he's a tough guy. But also learning how I learned even how to be more kind from the toughest guy I've ever met. And I gotta give him this. Darren Mulligan was the toughest man I've ever met in my life. Like still is. Like he'll come up to you, he'll be straight shooter. But he's where I found how to be more kind to people. When I found him, he wasn't kind. But by the time I left him, different man. I was a different man. And so that taught me, like, it's another mentor. He's another man. Another I was like, okay, God, I'll serve this man's vision, I'll serve the church vision, serving business. Like, okay, why? What's this all equaling up to? And then comes a tech company. Then comes pastor class.
So let's talk about let's now naturally move into
Okay.
When I met you,
Yeah.
when we signed, or earlier in the podcast we talk about the NDA. We're coming full circle back to the NDA now.
Yeah.
And you show up at a place that I'm working at, and with your son, and we're talking and all this stuff, and then you pull up this slide deck on the screen, and you kind of show me the vision behind some of this stuff. So walk me through about the story behind when all that came to, like, how did it start and where is it now?
Yeah. I got the vision for pastor class when I was still in Tulsa, serving at Transformation Church. And on that side of town, when it was on the north side, I would have to travel from the north side where I lived at to the other side, where Transformation Church was. And that was my first time kind of re-entering the hood because it was affordable. It was the first time, even for like a month, me and my wife, who got on food stamps and needed assistance. And I'm like, man, working for the church sucks. Like, I ain't making it. I'm used to being out here in the studio, traveling, playing, and making something decent. And then now I'm like truly serving. It's like literally without taking anything from the church, like whatever the church can pay, that's what we'll do. And I remember driving one Sunday, beautiful Sunday morning. I remember even looking at the north side of Tulsa saying, I can just see it differently. I've been enough places like this. It doesn't have to look like this. And I felt like the Spirit was saying, like, what are we gonna do about it? Like, and it wasn't until I was exiting Transformation Church in 2017 that God had dropped pastor class in my heart. At that time, I was learning from Miles Monroe about leadership and the spirit of leadership. One of my favorite quotes is, an army of sheep led by a lion would always defeat an army of lions led by a sheep. An army of sheep led by one lion will always defeat an army of lions led by a sheep. Earl Nightingale, as a man thinketh, so is he. You are exactly what you think you are. Napoleon Hill, Think and Grow Rich. Les Brown. When I was leaving Transformation Church, Craig Rochelle and Miles Monroe was my key to leadership, period. As I'm leaving Transformation Church, frustrated that I'm not the best that I want to be, I'm not learning the thing that I need to learn, which is leadership. I'm learning it on my way out. Like, it's doing this, and I'm kind of pissed off and frustrated. Like, why didn't I know this? Being here at the church, I could have been more valuable. And God was like, I got something up ahead I need you to focus on, pretty much. And so me going into business, into pastor class came out of God, me knowing the way that God solves things in the earth, Jim, is he gives man an idea. If you want to solve something in the earth, you want to end poverty in the north side of Tulsa, you want to bring back Black Wall Street and revitalize entrepreneurship, you want to build more churches, you want to do this, you're going to need an idea for that.
Well, he gives us that inspiration. And a lot of times we're not really think about, I've done a ton of studies about what to do with ideas, the idea development, and then the ideas that you need. There's a whole decision making behind ideas. Everybody thinks, well, it seems like somebody's got a lot of ideas. Well, what I found is that high level creative leaders, business development executives, encounter ideas either in their own head or from others all the time. And I think that part of that is that we've not trained ourselves on how to think about it. And when we talk about faith-given inspiration, like I believe in like inspiration that comes from the Spirit, and I call it intersecting. And it's basically, it looks to me, in my mind, it's a lot like if I go and I pour a cup of cold brew and I add some sort of creamer into it, and there's that swirl that happens. It's almost like, are we prepared for intake? Do we have an intake system of like, I remember seeing a quote by the guy who wrote A Series of Unfortunate Events, Daniel Handler. And Handler is known for saying, somebody asked him about, do you worry about not being able to do this all the time? He goes, I'm not worried about what's going to come. He's not, I'm not worried about the ideas and all the imagery that comes. He goes, I'm more worried about, do I have a way to deal with it when it comes? He goes, it's going to come regardless.
That's good.
And it's like, do we have we have a process to process our imagination, and do we have a process even to audit those things that we're given and where they are? Do we have a development system? But anyway, thinking about if we get an idea, whether it's a song or an idea for a podcast or an idea for a business, whatever it is, it's like, do we actually know how to take that thought and know how to like move that into and manifest it? And then do we have, we either have or we don't. Sometimes we lack the courage to take it to the next step. Because obviously, bro, where you are with all these things you develop, you had to have some courage at some point to take it out of your head and out of your, you know, where it lives on, project management software, on paper, wherever it is, have the courage to go and start. It's like, man, it's like the logical next step of a dream is like, Lord, I'm not extroverted enough to pull this off.
Yeah.
I am
Yeah.
knowing what I have to do, but I fear being misunderstood.
Yeah.
Or I fear failure.
Mm.
I don't like to start things and not finish it.
But when God gave me pastor class, and I started studying what it was, which is an ed tech technology company, I stopped for a year and a half. I was indecisive about it for a year and a half. Didn't make one move because I was like, I didn't graduate high school for this. The people I know who work on crap like this
Yeah.
is in Silicon Valley.
Yeah.
First of all,
or they went to some genius school.
And I went to Silicon Valley.
Yeah.
I went to like Toronto. I went to go. Like, I need somebody who knows something more than what I know. And it was in even more so. Well, it's 2025. It's in 2020 when everything went down. We lost all of our business. I said, God, if you want me to chase this idea that you give me, you're gonna have to pay for it. And almost like rain that started pouring. The jars that I had set out, and I use this analogy, kind of the widower, where the prophet Isaiah, I believe, was like, "What do you have in your house?" She's like, "All I got is this flask of oil." He's like, "Go run and grab all the jars you can find, bring them back." And then they said, in the Bible it says, as many as jars as she can keep bringing back, that's how much oil kept flowing. I didn't know that Eagle Eye was a jar. I didn't know that C3 was a jar. So that when I mention God provides the provision, that's even the business. That's the business. Why? And here's why God gives men ideas. And I mean, I'm not talking about an idea for like a song. That could be. But I'm talking about, if I'm talking about an idea for a song, it's a change the world. Like songs that can make people move or that can make millions. So you can reinvest into something else. An idea would be like Facebook. An idea would be like Uber.
Yeah.
Airbnb. That type of idea, you can change a culture.
Yeah.
You can almost dictate.
I mean, Uber and Uber Eats,
Yeah.
and all those, those startups that are now, they change the culture. Because think about how many cities you can fly into.
Man.
You don't have to rent a car.
You don't have to think about
it. You can go Uber.
Yeah, quick.
Right.
That's the type of ideas that God is giving me. And that's one I didn't feel equipped for. And so when he gave them to me, oftentimes whenever God would give a man a vision, not a dream, but a vision, the reason why it takes him longer is because he's got to get over himself, because a vision is not necessarily for you. It's usually for other people. Dreams are for you. What's your dream? Oh, I want to have a big house. I want to have a fence here. I want to have a wife, a dog, and a fence. Great. What's your vision? I won't talk about that right now. Because it's going to cost your life for the benefit of others.
Well, there's a sacrifice involved. Think about this. It's a Saturday.
Yeah.
And we're in my office at my house. You've got your gear here.
Yeah.
We're podcasting because we know that this is going to help tell both of our stories collaboratively with things that we're either involved with it directly or indirectly. And so we have pastor class. I know you recently went to a church planning conference. When you sat down with somebody like our friend Bob, how did you explain what pastor class was?
Yeah, I explained that pastor class, I think, is a gift. What I'm about to say to you, I did not say to Bob. I got this from sweeping last night, bro. When I was thinking on I don't even know why I was even thinking. I said, pastor class is a gift to the church, from the church, by the church.
It's a gift.
It's a gift, bro. Pastor class is a gift to the church, from the church, by the church. Pastor class is that what Mike's parents would call gap standard. Gap standard is somebody who is praying for you in the gap to try to get from there.
Gap standard.
Yeah. So I've been around, of course, many pastors, and one of their top issues has always been, I don't have enough time to pour into my leadership team or my staff, or there's not enough for me to go around
Mm.
in a leadership perspective, but also in a pastoral perspective. Pastor class helps staff, uh, church leaders, and pastors make more pastors in any position. Like, yeah, we can give a lot of leadership resources out. Yeah, we can develop a lot of it, but there's usually only one or two pastoral people in the building, ish,
Mm.
if it's more than one. I believe if more people were pastoral, either in nature or in a position, we can love and see people like Jesus did.
You know, there's a lot of things in my business, how I work with others, whether it's clients or
Hmm.
colleagues or associates or any number of like partners that I have, meaning like even like you, it's like you
Yeah.
and I do a lot of work in business and some life together. It's like I
Hmm.
think about people and sort of a partnership thing, but I believe that ministry, in some ways, ministry helped me understand how to do that better
Yeah.
because one of the things I was taught when I was in lay ministry was um, like I had a role of like assistant pastor, and it was like, but my focus was shepherding, but it was
Hmm.
not shepherding, but it was more like the development of leaders
Yeah.
and not so much filling slots, but looking for the
Yeah.
best people that God would have do
Right.
that.
Yeah.
And but my kind of my template for or my theme for doing that was something that my pastor at the time and mentor had told me. He's like, we need to focus on releasing people to their giftedness, not filling slots.
Mm-hmm.
So find out what people are gifted at and release them to do that. So I see pastor class, and I'm literally running this podcast right now. My mind just put the two and two together that pastor class is this engine that could
Mm-hmm.
help people get released to their giftedness
Yeah.
faster
Yeah.
because we can't do all that in person.
Yeah. You're doing two things. You're pastoring the gift that God has given you better, but also pastoring people while you're in the giftedness.
Mhm.
While you're using the gift, whether you're a leader, whether you're a worship leader, tech director, janitor, administrator, lead pastor, executive pastor, assistant pastor, associate
Facilities.
facilities, is all we are. We all have these gifts, and then somewhat titles of pastoral. But I think, to leadership, what we kind of phrase, there's a mindset to pastoralship, and I'm gonna call it like it is. There's a heart set that needs to be instilled. So not only does each leader in the church or even volunteer need to have a certain mindset, culture, and DNA, but we also need the same heart set.
Mhm.
That when your building has 50 people, nobody knows who the pastor is because we all kind of get the same
Yeah.
level of care. If you're in a room full of 200 people or 2,000 people, you're untouchable. Pastor's untouchable at 300, mainly 400 too as well. How can we be not only more pastoral in the church, but also in our giftedness? And then the third place, the marketplace. How can we be more pastoral? If you're a manager, a supervisor, you govern over people, you got to interact with people. Most often than not, we all come into a point of our careers where we got to deal with reality. No matter where you're working, somebody's going to come to the job probably in the middle of a divorce, or somebody dying, or somebody making a career change, and they may need to be shepherded or guided, not only to the next process, but maybe in that process too as well. That if you're on a job and you're a manager, and maybe the numbers don't look the same, maybe the money isn't flowing how, maybe we have to do some job cuts. Maybe that person who keeps coming in and not being able to perform at their best isn't not because of they don't know what's going on, it's because of what's going on at home.
Mm.
They're dealing with a lot of crap,
You know,
and you're the only priest on site. You're the only priest on site. How would you introduce them to the love of God without being giving them tracks and you need to know
yeah.
about Jesus before you go to hell?
Yeah.
I'm not talking about that guy. I'm talking about a guy so subtle you didn't even know he was really there. You didn't even know you were being pastored.
Yeah. Well, it's that idea of I've been in a lot of in and out of a lot of churches. I'd say in and out, but I've been in a lot of churches in the
I just got
past.
hungry when you said In and Out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's Whataburger up the street, but
Yeah.
that's a whole nother podcast. But a
Yeah, it
food
is. Yeah,
podcast,
it is. Yeah.
right? Being in a lot of churches, seeing a lot of different roles,
Hmm.
right? And but it's the people that you really get a sense when you walk into a church sometimes about the care that's involved.
Yeah.
But getting back to the, when it comes to things like evangelism or helping make a bridge with somebody, um, you know, I was reading a couple of years ago in a book by a pastor from Australia, and he was talking about how, there's some that are called to be evangelists for sure, and then there are some that are they're like the warm up team
Hmm.
that comes out and gets you warmed up,
Hmm.
so that when you do come to faith in Christ, it's already familiar.
Hmm. Hmm.
They're almost like the gap standard
Hmm.
kind of folks, but they are the people that warm people up to the idea. And we do that through making great music, podcasting, being great neighbors,
Hmm.
growing great gardens,
Hmm.
just being really like, sometimes, I don't need to go around and tell everybody I'm a Christian.
Yeah.
That actually is not my thing.
Yeah.
People know I'm a Christian because I go to church and I do a lot of things, and I have a lot of faith-based
Hmm.
projects, and then I have a lot of things that aren't faith-based.
Hmm.
Because what I want to do is in a ministry that had a big impact on me, and when I was in my late teens, was Young Life.
Hmm.
Because
Yeah.
that guy who just graduated, that invited another Jim, came to
Hmm.
my high school, invited me to Young Life Club, and
Hmm.
through Young Life Club, I heard the gospel message.
Hmm.
And I responded to the gospel message because it's God, again, God's intersecting with my story.
Hmm.
I heard somebody else who had a story that was so much like mine. I didn't think anybody else had my story
Hmm.
because, I grew up differently. It was like a
Yeah.
logging family. We're kind of poor. We lived out of town. It's like
Yeah.
life was different. But when it comes to the church, like what you're saying is like we often think we've got to like force things on people.
Yeah.
It's like, no, God never said that we had to actually go and like get in everybody's face.
Yeah.
And it's not that I'm anti-evangelism explosion, but the one-to-one principle of having conversations with people, building relationships, and trusting God to work through His Holy Spirit through you and through them.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
If you look at the true transformative power of the Holy Spirit, like sometimes regeneration, however you look at it theologically, regeneration can start like way
Yeah.
before they actually pray the prayer. The
Yeah.
Spirit's already
Oh
working.
yeah. Oh yeah.
You know,
It's in that
we just have
relationship
to have the
piece.
imagination and the faith
Come on, man.
to see that through. And then if we care deeply about the work that God's done in us, and we're passing on the comfort that we were given, like in
Mhm.
2 Corinthians, are we actually staying attuned enough to follow up and say, um, where are you at?
Mhm.
We even recently, you and I had a conversation about, what happens to people in churches. There's a continuity thread
Mhm.
after somebody's baptized or they come to faith in Christ. Does that church have an actual process for those people to be mentored and discipled?
Mhm.
Like, that's a huge passion of mine.
Mhm.
I've even reached out to you and said, hey man, we need to fill this hole somehow.
Mhm.
I already know this hole exists because I've seen it
Mhm.
in real time.
Mhm.
So pastor class is a way for us to also fill some of the gaps,
Oh yeah.
right?
Oh yeah. That's exactly what we do.
But it took imagination, it took courage,
Come on, man.
because I've got to be like, okay, how does this work? Pick up the phone, call my friend,
Just
call you, and
action.
say,
Yeah.
hey, dude, we need to like activate this. We need to
Yeah.
make a plan for it.
Yeah.
Which leads to why we're on this episode today.
Yeah.
That's under 6 hours at this point. But
Yeah. It's lunchtime.
yeah, it's lunchtime. But well, you feel like you got everything out that you wanted to talk
Yeah.
about?
Yeah, man. I
We can do it
love this.
again.
Yeah, I can communicate and connect and share what God has done and what He's doing. The story is we're right in the middle of it, man.
In some ways we're just getting, I mean, we're not quite launched yet,
Yeah, yeah,
right?
yeah. Just launched on socials. We'll launch in the summer. and it's the first of its kind. But I really believe that it's not only just for like the church, but it's like all the people who like, "Oh, I believe in God too. I have faith. I run a multi-billion-dollar business, and I've been thinking of this thing. I don't know where to." That's what past class is for. Yeah,
Awesome. Well,
yeah,
dude,
man.
thanks for being on my. Actually, I don't. We've never really done a podcast,
Yeah,
but we have a YouTube channel,
we're the first
and
now.
you're the
Yeah,
first. You're the first guinea pig. But I couldn't think of anybody better
yeah,
to have and talk about music and faith and
yeah.
technology and family and all the things. And
Mhm.
but thanks for taking the time, and
Yeah, brother.
we'll see you around.
Yes, sir. Thanks, man.
Thank you.